also the new AI. Right?
Yeah. Oh, the AI is
That's
crazy.
big.
It is. It is.
The future.
AI of Google has their AI that can create a video in like minutes.
Yes.
And it looks like a real person talking. You're like, what the hell?
Right.
Welcome back to the Passionate Paycheck Podcast. On today's episode, we have Charles. Hey, Charles, how are you doing?
Good. How are you guys?
Doing good. Thank you for coming.
Yeah,
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you again for coming. Really appreciate it. So to get started, go ahead and let the audience know a little bit of your background and what you're currently working on.
No, absolutely. My name is Charles Ernst. Started my own business 17 years ago. We have a insurance agency that works with employers. Health benefits. We do workman's comp. We also have another business if people are looking to consolidate their HR, payroll, benefits, workers' comp, kind of an all-in-one. But our goal is really to help business owners out there just succeed. And, we want to help people think a little bit outside of the box so, they have the ability to offer great benefits to their employees and make their lives a little bit easier and have great service.
Okay, nice. So how long have you been doing the insurance?
Yeah, it's been about 17 years.
Oh,
so
A little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit. So I've kind of been through the ins and outs of, some of this big change, right? ACA, otherwise known as Obamacare, and it's just kind of a crazy time to start because I actually started my business in 2008,
Oh, damn, that's when everything was...
Like,
Yeah.
it went down bad, huh?
It was terrible. It was
How rough was doing that during that time?
Well, it was, and I'll tell you, I mean, most people go, why would you ever pick that time to start a business? And I'll just kind of go back. I had set a goal that when I was 30 years old, that I was going to go out on my own. And one of the reasons why is I had early in my career, I had worked for other companies like, I don't know if you remember Gateway Computers.
Yeah.
Before that, I was in agriculture. I'd worked for, kind of extended family business. But, man, I got laid off like 3 times. And I was a single dad at that point. I'd just gone through a divorce. And I remember that last time. And I'm like, man, I'm not going to do this anymore. So I'm going to learn everything I possibly can. And when I'm age 30, no matter what, whatever's going on, I'm gonna go out on my own, and that's what I did. And yeah, it was kind of one of those surreal moments. I walked in my boss's office, had a really big book of business on the table, and he looked at me. I said, "Hey, I'm gonna turn in my resignation and go do my own thing." And man, it got really quiet, right? Like, and he goes, "I gotta leave," and I'm like, "What do you mean you gotta leave?" I was like, "We need to work this out." And he's like, "I just gotta go." So he gets up and leaves and comes back after a couple hours, and I kind of explained it to him, and I said, look, I can still represent you, right? And I'll broker for you, and we can do business together still, and you get to keep my commission, right, that you're paying me. And then all of a sudden everything kind of got really cool, right, at that moment. And
gave him some money.
Yeah, it was kind of one of those things, but that was kind of how we got started. But it was 2008, and I'd set a goal, and I just wanted to make sure I did it because I felt like if I didn't, then I might not have.
Nice. So what was one of the hardest obstacles starting the business during that time?
Well, it was just kind of going, so the interesting thing about that is that I was thinking about, all right, I'm just going to, I've had money saved in the bank, right? Things are kind of crazy, and I had remembered, that, one of the things I'm probably going to need is credit, right? You need lines of credit, for, when we sold something, when the customer pays, we get a commission afterwards. That's how the insurance business works. So sometimes you're not getting paid for a while, right? And if they miss a bill, then, that happens, and they pay the next month, you get delayed. So one of the things I proactively did was I went up, and back then, before all this, credit crunch stuff, you could go in with a really good W-2, which I had because, I had really good book of business, and you could open up lines of credit, personally. So I went to 3 different banks in 2 hours because, the credit stuff wasn't as quick then.
It takes a little bit.
Yeah. So I opened up 3 credit lines. I think it was a total of $110,000 between the 3, and I was
nice.
Okay, so I got that set, and then it was that. But what was really interesting during that time was you don't ever expect it to be really difficult I mean, you do, but you go out and if you're used to working for, someone else who's done all that marketing and laid all that groundwork and has all that infrastructure in place, man, you're going out there and you're thinking, oh, it's going to be like, oh yeah, no big deal. But I don't think you really realize, right?
It happens all the time.
Right? The business owners really do it, right? They spent all this time getting it ready. So that was kind of crazy. And then I met my wife a little bit before then, and she thought I was crazy too, right? Because, we were just dating and engaged at the time, and the crazy thing about it is that she came on board with me, right, and became my business partner, like right in the beginning, and we just had this journey, but we still had, bills to pay, right?
Oh, yeah.
I had to take care of my child support obligations to my son, who had lived about 50 miles north. So we couldn't really interrupt our life, from a day to day. So there were some sleepless nights there. I mean, it was really crazy.
I can only imagine, especially like, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? Because you don't realize how much groundwork, like you said, that actually is done for you.
Oh, yeah.
Until you're like, oh, shit, I got to do this on my own. It's not just going to come to me.
Yeah.
Because they'll give you all your clients. Well, oh, yeah, just take care of so-and-so, take care of so-and-so.
Yeah, or if you go out, you can say, oh, man, this business has been in business for, 20 years, right? And then when you're starting out, you're like, how long you been in business? Well, yeah, this is my first month. And where's your office? Well, I work out of my house, and, what's going on? But it was a blessing, man. I mean, we just really, just kept disciplined and focused. And I remember telling my wife, I was like, I really need somebody to do inside sales, and I'll do the outside sales. So we had come across this guy out of Dallas that was this like cold call trainer. And I said, I was like, you need to take a class. So we did this. I mean, I don't even think we had like webinars back then. It was kind of like over the phone, and he was, kind of going the ins and outs of what we're going to do. But man, she picked it up. And we currently have clients in 32 different cities in California. And that wasn't because that was the business plan. Those are the people that were willing to listen. So if I had to drive up to Yuba City, right, for a meeting, I did. So that's kind of how the business got built. And then it was funny because it built on the outside, and then it kind of came back to Bakersfield, which is right. So it's just kind of one of those things that you look back and go, man, that was a really crazy time.
It sounds like it for sure.
And how long did it took to actually start building the business where you would say, hey, it looks like we're going to make it now?
Yeah, that's a great question, because what had happened was I had so we had the lines of credit, and we also had savings. So I'd put I tried to proactively, give myself some runway. I didn't really think it was going to have as much runway as I thought. I mean, I had to go in there. And the other thing that kind of happened that was a little bit threw me for a loop was, I guess you guys remember in 2008 with the big credit crunch. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it was interesting because I had also had built up credit cards, and I didn't use them. But back then, I don't know if you remember when the banks were taking all your credit. If you weren't using it, they were just like dropping your limits.
Oh, dang.
So I knew they were going to do that to me on the credit lines because I didn't need to use them yet, but I thought, man, I might need to use them. So I went ahead and just withdrew all the money and then just kind of serviced the debt and, put it in savings as well. But it took about a good, I would say 2.5, 3 years to where I felt like, okay, I mean, we can breathe a little bit, and we don't have to have that many sleepless nights. But
around that time, I think it took a little bit longer because that's around the time I started the company here.
Yeah,
which I do auto collision.
Yes,
and it was 2008, and it took about 3 years because I was like, and I was the same way. I was like, I know it's gonna be hard, I know it's gonna take a little bit, but I didn't know it was gonna take that long, and it was gonna be that hard. But I think it's because the whole crash and everything that was going on, everybody was hurting. Whoever was in business, they were barely hanging on to. So everybody was struggling a little bit. You could say.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and also it was kind of a weird time of like fear. Remember when they had like some of those banks like Washington Mutual, and people were actually going and waiting outside to take cash out of their bank accounts, and that's like the number one big thing you don't do. Right. And then everybody was like, man, I got to go get all my cash. And you're like, and then they lock the doors. I mean, you just hear this kind of thing, and you're like, is this going to be like is this going to be like total, like, disruption? We're going to have like, National Guard in the streets because people are freaking out. I mean, I think you kind of had that kind of extreme. And then I think you had a lot of businesses, right? Like us, starting out, that were just like, okay, all right, this is crazy. Right? Yeah. And then you're just like, well, I have no choice. I got to just keep my head down and go. I mean, those first few years, man, I drove like 40,000 miles a year just going back and forth. And, it was like, okay, can't do a hotel, can't spend the money for a hotel. I got a really fuel efficient car. Yeah, there you go. Then you go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it was kind of crazy. But I know what you mean. I think people were like really on edge from a standpoint of, I don't think they'd ever seen anything like that before in that magnitude. Yeah. Right? Because it was just like such a crash. Bad. Yeah. It did.
Yeah. A lot of people lost their business, their homes.
Yeah.
And a lot of people lost everything, their whole life savings. And then when they started closing the doors, the banks were giving their money out. Even you had money in there, and it was your money, and like, oh, we ran out of money.
Yeah, like we don't have any more cash, and everybody's like, I don't even know what that means,
right?
And then you're like, well, but think about it. They really are only required to, as a bank, to hold on to 10%, right? Yeah. I mean, the whole bank. That doesn't mean they have the whole 10% in that branch, right?
The whole bank
itself. But that was a weird time. Yeah. I mean, you kind of thought like
it was rough.
It was rough because remember, it was just kind of humming so like quick, and then. One of the other things that happened to me was, I bought at the top of the market. Like, it was my first home back in 2000, I think it was 6. And I remember I was so happy. It was one of those Lennar homes. And, man, I think I bought it for, like, a little over 300, like 308,000. Yeah. Which, because remember, everybody's home at that time. Right. But it was like, it was going up and up and up and up and up, right? And then I remember, like, after the crash, it was like worth 150. And I'm like, dude, I'm never going to be able to move. Right? So it took a long time to get back to the point where it actually made sense. But yeah, that was kind of a weird time. I remember that being like one of those things where we just were like, there was a lot of prayer. There was a lot of faith. There was a lot of going, trusting in the Lord, just going, on and on about like, did we make the right decision? Because, in the end, it all kind of falls on your back. So it was a blessing that, we made it through that time and kind of went on. And then I would say that as we continued to build it, I think like right around, 2016, we expanded the office. We had more employees. We just really started to kind of hit our stride. And then, as you all know, right, come 2020, that was another weird thing, right? So, yeah, but it was great. But I will say that sometimes in those times of like uncertainty, the biggest opportunities come, right? Because if you're the voice of reason and you can bring some level of just stability or just like knowledge base where people can just calm down a little bit, I felt like that was a really big thing that helped us, especially when we're talking to people. Because, we had that whole, ACA and Obamacare thing. People didn't really understand it, and rates were continuing to go up. But, man, it was kind of a bumpy ride, right?
A lot of knocking doors.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And at the beginning of your business, what's one of the biggest lessons you learned right before you were like, oh, this is going to work?
Consistency was key, and the discipline to be consistent, right? Because, a lot of people go, oh man, you have so much freedom as a business owner, right? That's
the first thing they think about.
Yep. It's like, man, I'm the owner, I'm the boss, I can do whatever I want, right? And I don't have to do these things, but you have to. If you don't, then it's not going to happen.
First one there, last one gone.
Yeah, willing to put the 14, 15-hour days. But I always think back about, some of our experiences in life. So I'd mentioned I work in agriculture, and I worked in a packing house, and that was kind of the drill. Like during the season, it was like 14-hour days. So I did that for about 3 years. So when it was like time to do it in my own business, it wasn't like, oh, hey, it was no big deal. So if it was every day like that, no problem. I was able to do it then, and a lot of that is just kind of showing yourself that if you do have that ability to do something, and then you can follow through on whatever that task is, you just have to treat it. So I would say discipline and consistency was just really important.
definitely.
And is that something you learned at a young age, or is that something you built over, like, as you got older?
You know, one of the things that's interesting is that, like, so my dad was, you know, pretty much a do what you're going to say you're going to do person, right?
Yeah.
So if I told him that I was going to do something and I didn't do it, right, there was kind of like that level of, like, why aren't you going to do that?
Yeah.
So don't make commitments that you're not going to keep. And, you know, I'm going to be straight up. I wasn't like, I mean, I was a kid as a teenager, you know, I didn't really kind of understand that. But that was one of the things that he really instilled. And that in itself is a discipline because, you know, if you say you're going to do something, then you have to do it. So whether it's your, you know, to your family or to your customers or whatever. And if you can't do something, then you got to own up to it and say, hey, you know, maybe we got to try something different. But I would say that, yes, I mean, the upbringing was very much in that. But the teaching me how to work part was really in that packing house because, man, that's a lot of hours. And it's just, and it's the same thing over and over and over again. And I'd look up there and go, how many more bins do we have to do today, right? Yeah. Oh, man, we got to get all these orders. They just keep on coming, keep on coming. And yeah, but when you get to that point where you actually have to have 3 breaks, then you know you put in a long day, right? Because you got to have a dinner break. So it's pretty good. But it was nice.
Yeah.
And how was it when you first hired your first employee? Like, what made that decision? Like, oh, we need some more help.
Oh man, I will tell you that was a little bit of a rigmarole, you know, because I would say that as business owners, right, when you have people in the business, you know, and you're doing multiple things, you don't really 100% have it dialed in. You have it dialed in your way. Right? And you have it dialed in where everybody knows what they need to do, but you may not have a system that somebody else can fit into. You know, you guys know what I'm talking about, right? Because it's different when you're doing that. But that was a difficult transition because, you know, everything wasn't perfect. Like, you know, it wasn't like, oh, all the files are like, you know, we had a filing system that we thought was good, that we understood, but it wasn't really like necessarily trainable, right? And it was like, oh, wait a minute. So we got to do a lot of like, you know, oh, we got to make this so people can, you know, come in and go, oh, this kind of makes sense, right? Even though it was organized, it was just organized the way that we would access it.
It worked for you guys.
It worked for us. And and then, you know, attitude was another thing, you know, because when you had somebody who was kind of coming into a scenario like that where, you know, we were expanding and growing, which everybody has some pains, right, here and there when you expand and grow, then we were like trying to get that same type of commitment that we were willing to give, you know, to someone who was like, well, I'm just here.
It's just a worker.
Yeah, exactly. They weren't as vested as we were into that. But so what ended up happening, I think our first like expansion employee in that sense, you know, lasted for, I don't know, maybe not even a little over probably a year. But then we got, you know, the next employee and the next employee, and as they kind of come in. So we've got some longevity now. Like, we got a great team. But I remember that first point of that was a little bit weird. I mean,
growing pains.
Growing pains. To be fair, I was like, man, where are we at on this? You know, why isn't this like so understandable? But it really was a lot of growth for me to see that. And in various stages of the business as we expanded, I found the same thing to be true. So just because your system works today, when you go to a broader spectrum of, you know, more people, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to continue to work. So it's an ongoing process. It's not like you do it one time and everything's perfect.
Nope.
Never that way.
Never.
And then you mentioned you have a PEO business brokerage?
Yes.
How did that begin?
Well, that's actually, interesting enough, that was the first business.
Oh, that was the first business.
So that was, and it's still existent, but it was, so I work for a PEO here in town. And before that, I was in technology, you know, and so, you know, I was kind of used to this sale that was a little bit not like, okay, do you want to buy this? And then it's a really quick transaction. This was information gathering, you know, looking at time that was spent, you know, a lot of documents and really kind of pitching like, you know, this is going to be the offering. And one of the things that always struck me before I went out on my own was that we were like, I always felt like we were a fit, you know, for a certain type of business, right? I mean, not a niche. I mean, there was a good variety of businesses that would work. But I always thought to myself, I'm like, man, you know what? We may not be a fit for everyone. And we would have that. I'd sign up a client, and, it was a lot of work, and we'd get in there, and then we'd find out that, we weren't like 100%, and we would have to, and what I mean by that is that, like, to serve, each aspect of their needs, whatever it was, right? Maybe they're in a different type of industry, and, it probably made sense for them to be more with a PEO that was catered to that. So when I went on my own, I thought, man, you know what? Wouldn't it be great to broker for, a group of PEOs that I know well and I understand the industry, so when I go to a customer, then they would be like, well, hey, this is what I'm looking for, and then I could tailor their needs and then customize, what they wanted, and then bring it to the PEO that would be the best fit. And that was great, but I'll tell you what, I knocked on a lot of doors, and some people kind of went for it, and other people were like, you know what, we're not really into this PEO thing, but we really like you. Do you do insurance? And I'm like, oh, man, right? So that was kind of the genesis of the insurance agency. And then we've kind of always done both, because we know that some clients, so some of our clients actually are in a PEO for workers' comp and payroll, and then they do their benefits and, with us separately, or we have people that are all in it or none at all, or they were in a PEO for a while and now they're just, standard market clients are outside of that. So we bring a very unique perspective when we look at these things, because I think the way that I'd like to describe how we like to operate is, if we're working with a customer, number one is, we want to be able to understand what's going on in their business, and we want to be able to help them through whatever it is, right? So price is always the number one, right? Everybody's always wanting to save money, but it's like, okay, well, let's also ask the question, what are you getting for, what you're paying, right? Because, cost is always measured, tangibly, transactionally, and intangibly. And I think the thing is, a lot of times people, need some help kind of seeing, oh, there's different avenues that, we could potentially go. So, and the end result should be, if it's going to be employee benefits or it's going to be something for the employees, we got to look at them as customers too, right? Mm-hmm. Yep. So yes, the business is our customer, but the end user is our customer. So we want to take that approach and think about the whole picture and go into it thinking, okay, not only do we want to take care of our, customer, the company, right, and the owner, we want to take care of the employees, and we want everybody to look at this thing as, something positive, to go forward. And if we can do it in such a way that reduces costs, then, we're going to hit our goals. So my analogy is hey, if you want me to build you a car, right, I want to be able to build you a car that works for you, that you can drive. Yeah. And, the idea is that, you're going to go along, and then if there's some bumps on the road or something that needs to be fixed, every now and then, right, then that's what we're there for. And then, we tune it up, right? Yep. But if you want a race car, we can do that too, yep. Right? So if you want a whole pit crew, however you want it, that's going to help you get your goals. But I think a lot of people have a negative connotation on insurance as a whole. Yeah. I mean, man, even with this, the expense of what it's costing. I know a lot of the property and casualty, which we're licensed there too, the general liabilities have been going up, right? Commercial auto. Mm-hmm. Now we even have on the personal lines, home and auto, right? People are leaving the state. Benefits, I mean, I've got benefits that's kind of crazy, and I think about it what the family rates are. Yeah. I mean, it's the price of a mortgage.
Oh, damn.
So how right? So how are people really kind of looking at that? So you're really kind of working now in this environment where people just think negatively about insurance. But I will say this: when they have it and they need it and it's there, they really like it. But, so what we try to do is say, okay, look, we know that part. It's not hard for people to understand that. But to try to tell somebody it's going to cost them this much and so on and so forth. So we look at the plans, and there's some unique ways that we can kind of approach this, to make this a really good win-win, especially for the employees. And then, we want to make that employer look good, right? Yeah. Because they work hard, right? We know, right? When I was starting my business, I had no idea, right? So, I mean, that kind of translates in that as well.
I think the biggest thing in that is that a lot of people they're not educated,
right?
So that's why they have that misconception.
Yes. I mean, you guys know if you guys have been in business, so you know what it's like, because you're trying to, you as a business owner, you're trying to get that messaging to kind of relate, you know, because, and they're not thinking about it, and everybody's having a hard time right now with inflation and, you know, the gas prices, what they are, and, you know, food prices and so on and so forth. But at the same time, you know, business owners are having their own inflation, you know, and their own added expense. So now you have both sides. And both sides are looking at each other going, oh man, you know what are we going to do with this? And I think it gets tense sometimes. You know, because, you know, there isn't really a good answer to this, except, you know, it might be a little painful for a little while. But, you know, have faith. I mean, these things happen. We've seen this before. We saw it in 2008. We saw, you know, what happened in 2020. You know, so now we're, you know, 2025. And, you know, I think we'll get through this too. I mean, I think it's just a matter of people making adjustments. But I think people are just tired, man, right? Like, they're just tired. So,
like, what's next?
yeah, like, what's the next thing that's going to come on? So every time, and I don't think the media, man, as a whole.
It's the worst.
Oh, my gosh. if people didn't have as much exposure to media these days, I think.
Life would be better.
I think it would.
That's why I don't watch the news. I don't watch none of that. The media.
No. I know, and it changes every day, right? And then it's always this big thing.
Fear.
Oh my
Doomsday's coming.
Yep.
Financial markets are crashing. Don't buy this. It's gonna go down.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And then remember the market went down, and then it's kind of come back up, but they didn't talk about the part when it came back up to where it was.
They're like, it's crashing. It's going down. Sell. And then that's where all the people are selling. They're like, and then it goes back up. It's like, what the fuck did I sell for?
Right. And they're like, oh man, I just cashed out all my stuff and took a loss.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah, I know. It's hard because I get it. Digital media as a whole is how we have to get information out now.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're just like, man, there's a lot of people that just throw a lot of fear out there. And there are some studies that say that, I mean, just like if you do 14 or 15 minutes of fear-based information or media, dude, it'll ruin your whole day. It'll wreck your whole day, and you'll just be in a mood. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely felt that when I watch the news, and I'm like, what the fuck? Why am I angry right now?
Yeah, it's like, why am I so you know, it's like, why can't I just feel good? You know, it's like, I don't know.
No, I didn't know about the study, but that's interesting for sure.
Yes, because if you look into that, but so think about that. So, I mean, if you think about it big picture-wise, if other outlets know that, right? Which they do, right? These big companies, they know, man. So have you ever noticed, like, anytime you watch just news in general, it doesn't matter, you know, what kind of news you want to watch, that's your prerogative, you'll notice it's always like, it's like very like sensationalized and a little bit scary. Right?
Yeah.
Like it's designed to create a fear-based knowledge, right? And then all of a sudden people are like, okay, you know, and they're kind of jittery. But I think that's probably one of the reasons why, you know, people are so upset all the time, right? Yeah. I mean, I'm sure, you know, I know you fix cars, so I'm sure a lot of that, man, people are just like flipping out. They're not all there because they're like, you know, just not doing stuff.
They end up driving like crazy and...
Oh, yeah? I've seen some angry people on the road, man, and I'm like, dude, I just want to stay away from you, man.
Like, go ahead.
Yeah, if you're that mad, go ahead. I'll pull over.
Yeah, there you go. That's the best thing you can do.
Yeah, that's crazy stuff, man. But, yeah, like, so I don't know, like, you know, where we're going to head, because I feel like everything's like, every day there's some new thing, you know, on the news. So I think I agree. When you say I don't watch the news, or I don't watch the news, or I just try to, you know, limit that, I think that's good advice.
I think that's important, and then what you consume too.
Yes.
Like, what are you consuming every day? Is it something positive to be like how you're saying, be a better person as a whole, not just in one thing, but as a whole, and what you're consuming. So if you're just consuming fear, and news, all negative stuff, and you're gonna be like that all the time, or you're gonna like kind of block that out. No matter what's happening, we're still going to continue to show up and try to be a better person no matter what. You know,
Right.
so you're going to consume something that's going to benefit you in your future.
I think you're right on in that, because I think if you take a little bit of time each day in the morning to get started, and I think we all have to be aware of like how we're stimulated every day and like how much information comes at us. You know, like I'll be at work and I turn on and then all of a sudden something will pop up, right? And I'm like, wait a minute. Do I really want to look at that, right? But going back to that space, because I can tell you right now, I don't think there's anything that's been a headline that has affected me in such a way that I had to like look and read into it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And half the time, 2 days later, it's gone anyway.
Yeah.
So like you don't even know. Everybody's like, hey, did you see what happened with such and such, such and such? No. Well, where you been? And then 3 days later, you go to look for it and
Gone.
it's gone. So
So with being in the industry for 17 years,
yes.
how have you made adjustments during those like down times, like you're saying 2020, and then even now?
Yes. Well, that's interesting you say that, because 2020 was really weird in the sense that, obviously we all had the lockdowns, right?
Yeah.
I think you had a lot more Zoom, right? I'm sure the Zoom stock went up through the roof and all these type of stuff. So I'm a very face-to-face kind of guy. I like that type of business model. And I think a lot of people liked it. That's why I was driving 40,000 miles a year. But now what's weird is people are more inclined to be like, oh, are we doing a Teams meeting? Are we doing a Zoom meeting? I feel like there's a lot more two-dimensional interaction than there ever has before, right?
Yeah.
Like you're not in person anymore. So we've had to make adjustments in that because, you guys know like anything else. I mean, when we're sitting here, like we're looking at each other's body language, right? Communication happens in more than just verbal.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a lot of stuff you're not going to be able to catch, especially if they don't even have their cameras on.
Yeah.
I mean, for all you know, they're like, typing up emails and just like, oh yeah, that's great, whatever. You don't have that like positive. So there's always I always look at the plus and minuses of stuff. So it does make it more efficient to have meetings, right? Because you're not trying to have this large schedule of, okay, well, can I actually make time? And we all know you schedule yourself for an hour somewhere. I mean, it's an hour and 15, hour and a half, and that's both ways. You get to talking. It seems like you could do more on the Zoom space. But I don't know if you're really kind of getting that relational piece across as much. So that's one of the I think the downsides. But then at the same time, meetings that probably used to take like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, or even an hour. I mean, you're getting them done in 25, 30 minutes because, people just kind of know. It's like, oh, yeah, the timer's only set for 30 minutes. And so I do think that the efficiency is good. So I just don't know what the happy in between is. But I think with younger generation, I mean, I think they're just as fine, they're fine with like meeting that way.
Yeah.
Like
It's more normal for them than how we grew up meeting face to face.
Yes. I mean, it's I don't really
handshake and all that.
Yeah, you remember the handshake was like the big thing, and it's like even my dad would always say, you gotta shake the hand, firm handshake, look him in the eye, introduce yourself. But it's just crazy, man. So yeah, that's so that, and also the new AI. Right?
Yeah. Oh, the AI is
That's
crazy.
big.
It is.
Now
It
they
is.
have
The future.
AI of Google has their AI that can create a video in like minutes.
Yes.
And it looks like a real person talking. You're like, what the hell?
Right. And it's like, well, where are we at on this? And I think people are kind of so again, right, when you look at how the industry is changing, I mean, if you guys, for health insurance, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, just to give you some perspective, when I first went out on my own, I got an individual policy. And it cost me, at 30 years old, $79 a month. Okay, so, but it was an HSA, it was a high deductible, so it had a $5,000 or $4,000 deductible, $5,000 out-of-pocket max, which meant that if I had a catastrophic, $5,000 is what I was going to be on the hook for. And if I had to go to the doctor, I paid the full boat, maybe it was $65, $70, but that cost me under $1,000 a year, right? Fixed premium. So like as you kind of go on, and you get to like the 2010, ACA Obamacare rollout. Right now, I'm paying $240, with a $6,000 out of pocket, 40% coinsurance plan, and I'm like, okay, I haven't aged this much, right? So what is going on? And then as you kind of have this exponential part, because things are just more and more expensive, and I just found out that they're offering nurses like $100K, man, full benefits. I mean, we're talking 22 years old, just graduating from nursing school. They're getting paid $100,000, and they're giving student loan forgiveness. So I mean, that's just the entry level nurse. So like, I'm like, man, I mean, how do you support an industry that has an expensive payroll like that, right?
Yeah.
And a cost of doing business. And I'm not saying that nurses don't deserve that. I mean, good for them. But when you look at it, from a business perspective, you're thinking, wow, I mean, this is literally somebody right out of nursing school is getting this kind of like income. So what is the person that's been there for 5 years or 10 years getting? And then you go all the way up to X-ray technicians and so on and so forth. And then you just look at this and you go, yeah, I mean, our healthcare costs are going through the roof. So that's been a real big challenge, because we're seeing companies go, I can't sustain this. I can't sustain 10%, 12% rate increases every single year. And then, right now they're saying that, medical inflation is at an all-time high, as has been in 30 years. And you have a lot of these hospital systems that are now negotiating with these carriers for more money.
Oh, dang.
Right? So it'll happen. This is true story. A couple years ago, man, I think it was up in Fresno. They had a big medical system up there that wanted a big rate increase across the board. I mean, highest in the United States. And their contract ended in January. They didn't come to an agreement till June. So you had all these employers, because they had the biggest subscribership in that area, meaning that they had the majority of people on their plan, right, over other carrier, right? Like, they were exponentially more.
Yeah.
So they got hit the hardest. And this is crazy. This will blow your mind. So the hospital, right, wasn't in network, because during this contract deal, the hospital had medical groups underneath. Like, you kind of see how that worked. Yeah. Their doctors had that carrier that they were negotiating with. Their own doctors couldn't come to their hospital because they wouldn't take the insurance. Right? Because they weren't in contract.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. So then you have that, so that skyrockets. So what do you think happens to the rates, right? They got to pay it. They settled up for a 5-year contract. They want to build more facilities. They want to do this. So, like, I mean, I get it. I don't really know what the answer is. I think hopefully, these guys, in politics, in our government, like, need to, like, kind of, like, figure out what the in between. But I'll tell you what I think is going to be something real interesting is the AI component here. Mm-hmm. So I was at a conference just probably in March, and what I saw just blew my mind on what they have. So I'll give you an example. This guy was sitting there, and he was telling us, and he was an MD. He graduated Stanford. He was an MD. He did that for a while, but he's also in the venture capitalist space, and they invest in all sorts of things. And he was showing this little pill, and it had a camera on it, and he swallowed it, right? And it has some kind of propulsion. I can't tell you exactly the tech. I mean, but he's sitting there with a PlayStation controller, zipping around his GI tract. Okay. And then, yes, right. And in real time, it's reporting back the images, which we now know probably, right, that you're going to see AI take all of that, right? And then they're going to it's going to analyze it in real time. No more, I got to, do like whatever. I got to, call me back next week for the results kind of a thing. This thing is happening in real time. And then obviously, we don't have to get too graphic. You know where the exit point is of this pill, right? It's going to exit the body. But I'm sitting there thinking, this is crazy. And he was able to stop it, turn it back around and deal with this. So let's think about this. So normally you'd have to get an endoscopy. If you have it, right? So that means that they have to put a tube and a camera down your throat, which is extremely uncomfortable. I've never had one done, but nobody ever talks about like how great that is. And then, on the other end, it's going to be a colonoscopy. So you're going to be in that. So now you have this one thing, right? And this is the only thing that we know about. they can basically be popped in and it's zipping around and doing all the things with what's the risk, right? Like somebody swallows the pill, they can be awake. They don't have to have the anesthesia, or whatever they do in those tests to kind of do that. You don't run a lot of risks, right, of, kind of cutting something in, right? Because there's a lot of subsequent claims that happen because, things happen. And I mean, that's only one thing. He also said that Apple is working on an AI doctor. So, they've been, the whole AI watch, right? I don't have one because, I'm more of a traditionalist than that. But, but what they're saying now is that this thing is so sophisticated now, it can tell so many things about you, and it's going to be, plugged into this AI that they're developing, and then it's going to tell you way ahead of time if something's going on. So, everybody knows a preventative, right? Just like anything else. If you prevent something, it's going to be less expensive. But I was telling a friend of mine of this, and he's a little bit older than me, and he recently got diagnosed with AFib, and the only way that they can diagnose you an AFib is that you have to be an AFib, right? So he wasn't feeling so hot, and he called his primary care one day and drove over there, and they're like, hey, can you drive to the cardiologist because you need to go? And anyway, next day they had him a procedure, then he went home, and then he had to go back. I mean, we can kind of think about that. Yeah. So he told me that his Apple iWatch was warning him periodically for a year, different times of the time, just going, hey, something's going on. And he just thought it was broken, or he didn't know what it was. But this thing had already detected that there was some type of anomaly in his heart.
That something was different.
And something was different. So think about this. Let's say that people have wearables, right? You don't have to have an iWatch. You can have something else. Yeah. And you're going through this process. And I know they've been working on this for a long time, because I'd say about maybe 8 or 9 years ago, I went up to look at some stuff up at another carrier in their research and development, and they were talking about wearables, and it was a little bit not as sophisticated as it is now.
Right.
But could you imagine what your health would look like if you were able to have that information being uploaded on a regular basis, and it could actually project what could potentially go wrong, right? And then, so again, we don't know how it's going to be. I'm just saying that if I'm looking at it going, okay, well, if you can cut out a lot of this, transactional stuff, right, because there's more preventative, maybe that's the answer. Yeah. But I know that was a very long answer to your question, but man, this is getting...
it's crazy.
It's a combination of everything that's happening, right?
Yeah, because now everything's happening, technology, AI, everything all at once. So that's why even being a business owner, we should learn about it, not be scared about it. It's like, how can we benefit from this?
Right, you got to embrace it.
Yeah, because we have no choice. It's going to stay here whether we like it or not. So might as well learn it to see how can we better help our customer. What can we do to mitigate? Instead of spending an hour doing this, how can we cut it down to 15, 30 minutes so then we have an extra 30 minutes of doing something else that's productive?
Absolutely. I think, is it just me, but people are a little bit anti-AI, right?
No, they
hate it.
I've came across people and they're like, AI, that is horrible. I'm like,
they're scared of it.
Yes. I'm like, it's going to take your job if you don't adapt. If you don't adapt, you're going to have no job. So even I've even seen artists who are scared of it, and I'm like, why are you scared? It'll make you come up with ideas faster. It'll give you a blueprint right away to trace over or to start drawing from without having to get the idea.
Right.
So a lot of them are like, but it takes away the creativity. I'm like, okay, well, just forget it. You're still getting creative. You still have to prompt the AI to generate what you want.
Right.
So it's not like you just say something and it's going to regurgitate what you're looking for. You have to be very specific. And that's what the other thing is, prompt engineering.
Yes.
That, I think, is going to be the next frontier as far as engineering.
Yeah.
Is using AI to code, to do whatever you want, essentially, but learning how to prompt it. That's where the key is, because people will talk to it, but it's not going to give you the same answer. If I put it in one way and then I say the same thing in a different way, it's going to regurgitate different information.
Absolutely. Well, it's kind of funny that you say that, because I think people think, I don't know what they think it should be able to do, right? It's not going to just hey, all of a sudden just wake up one day, right? You turn it on and it's like reading your mind, and it's like, but you have to ask it very specifically, just like you said. If you don't know how to prompt it, it's not going to work efficiently for you. And I don't know, I was listening to a podcast, and this guy was like, he at first was anti-AI, and then he finally like, look, we're going to have to adapt. Then he asked it, how do you learn? And it asked him back, how many biographies have you read? And he goes, I read 6. And he goes, and the AI comes back and says, I've read them all. So, so think about that. You have this tool that has all the information at your fingertips. How much time can you save by not having to, like, just try to find all this stuff? I mean,
so much time. I've saved, I would say, hundreds of hours of just time of that. It would have took me. I've even coded stuff, and I've never even coded. That's the crazy part.
Yeah, and you're kind of like, wow, this is kind of crazy. And you know what's funny is that, like, people are saying, oh, well, it's gonna displace and it's gonna do this. Well, I mean, we've had other situations in history. It may not be exactly like this, but when Ford invented the assembly line, right? Yeah. I mean, they were able to do more in less time because of the way that we're doing it, and so on and so forth. And people adapt. I think the thing is that people want to be told that, hey, everything's going to be okay. And we get back to this moment where people just don't want to do change, and
they're scared of change.
And hey, we're entrepreneurs here. Okay, all of us, and if you're opening up another business, you got to work hard. You got to do that. So, or you got to adapt, or you got to figure out, or you got to put in the reps. It can't just be like it never is, right? Or it's never going to be worth doing. So
exactly. I think it's just embracing and educating.
Yes.
And I think they see like the iRobot, which maybe that'll happen down the line, Terminator.
Oh, yeah. I'm thinking more like Terminator 2, man. That thing was like, crazy, right? Yeah.
But like for now, I think they're just learning, even like when they're saying like, oh, it's going to take my job. I'm like, I'll start learning a new skill now to help you make money. And so it doesn't, so even if it takes your job, okay, well, now you learned a new skill using AI.
Yes.
Instead of like just asking it different random questions, ask it, how can I make more money doing this on the internet? Or what ideas can you give me to generate more income? This, that. What are options out there? It can tell you everything. How do I start implementing this? Can you write me a business plan for the new business? Can you do this? And it'll do everything.
Oh, yeah.
It's like your assistant.
Yeah. And it'll do it quick, too.
Oh, fast.
Right? So fast. And you're like, wow, man, I could, normally if I would have assigned that to somebody, that would have been like, all right, give me a couple of weeks, right?
Yeah.
For a business plan or something, right? Even if you hired a consultant that was like really, because they're trying to do that amongst everybody else that they're doing it for.
Yeah, exactly.
So, that's crazy, man. It'll be interesting.
It'll be interesting.
But we got to keep an open mind, just like you guys are talking about. You can't be afraid of it, and it's not going anywhere. And it's not like all of a sudden they're going to be like, okay, you know what? There's too many people that are upset about this. We're just going to stop.
Adapt and innovate.
Yeah. And how do you see AI playing a role in your business?
Well, I think we can really try to. So this is the crazy thing about it. Like I've always had for 17, 20 years in my, career, I was like, oh man, wouldn't it be neat if we could, do something like this, or if I could, this idea. I mean, you got years of ideas that I'm able to kind of pull back out of the brain. But I think a lot of ways is like it'll make our team more efficient. It'll enable them to do a lot of that transactional work much quicker, so they can focus on the important things. Because we know one thing for sure: human interaction isn't going to go away, right? Because human beings crave human interaction, and you're going to have different levels of that. So wouldn't it be better if you could spend your time doing the most productive thing, which is helping somebody, right? Either over the phone or whatever that is, or in person, because you're not tied up having to do some kind of a booklet or, do some kind of a, transactional task that this AI can do. And then basically making yourself 5 to 10 times more productive so you can focus on the things that really matter. It all matters. It does.
Yeah.
But what I'm talking about is there are going to be higher levels where, we run into stuff all the time right now where people get stuff, denied. Mm-hmm. You know, and a lot of times there has to be an appeal involved, and it takes time because you're trying to go back and, you know, go to the service provider, and, you know, sometimes they didn't fill out the paperwork correctly. That happens. Mm-hmm. You know, or the insurance carrier's like, okay, well, they didn't put what we needed them to put, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of it's just miscommunication. And in the meantime, somebody's here who is paid their premiums that has it, and it could be for them or a loved one, and they're absolutely freaked out that this isn't going to happen. And to them, right, being sick or needing help in that aspect, right, that's something that's not going to be an automated thing, right? You need to be able to walk somebody through that, and then, you know, have that level of empathy, you know, to know what they're going through. But if you had more time to focus, you know, those things, because those things can't be automated, because you have to actually get a person, you got to make a case. Then I think in the near term, I think that's going to be one of the biggest assets that I think this AI is going to be for the team, because they can now focus on doing stuff, and we're going to be able to do more.
Yeah.
And that's key.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely. And then do you see it being different for both of your businesses, or do you see it working together for the PEO and the insurance?
I think it'll be a little bit different. I mean, the PEO part, like if you place them with a PEO vendor, you know, they're doing a lot of the service work, right? So, you know, whatever they have. But we manage the relationship piece and just make sure it's working, right? Okay. And that type of piece. So maybe I can see it being more maybe on the lead gen side, maybe the information gathering side. I was actually kind of playing around with an idea, because remember I said that I like the idea of having, you know, multiple vendors available, but I really want to kind of streamline it. I think people always like to have a choice. So, you know, maybe I can streamline it to 2 or 3 that'll be really good fits, and, you know, and then kind of allow them to, you know, do their interview process. But I think I could probably train it to like really kind of gather, you know, instead of me like just looking at it and going, you know what, based on all of this analysis that I did, I think that's going to be a good fit for this vendor or this vendor and this vendor. So if I have the ability to take that and prompt it and train it the way that I look at things, right, my expertise, and I can put the information in there and it can tell me a lot quicker, this process would probably go a lot quicker. But only if people give me the information on time.
There you go.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, that might be a way to really just, you know, utilize something. And you could do that with a majority of things in sales, right? If you could find that better fit or some different ideas. So yeah, I think we're going to all be able to handle a lot more volume. That's what I think, because we can exponentially recreate our output.
Yep.
So I think it's going to be a really good thing.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I just definitely see at least a huge surge in people, I think, embracing AI eventually.
Yes.
Which I think they will have to teach kids in school.
Yes.
To learn how to talk to it and do all the prompting. And I think that's going to be one of the hidden jobs or opportunities for these younger kids.
Yes.
Because it seems like more robotics, obviously, they're making more robotics to replace the simple jobs in society. The fast food, the restaurants, your servers, all those small jobs will be gone.
Yeah.
So teaching our kids now, okay, let's start talking to the AI, start learning how to talk to it.
Right.
And then that, I think, is going to, the kids that know prompt engineering now is going to enhance their future. Just like when kids were learning coding at the age of 10, it's the same concept now. There are 18-year-olds making 6 figures plus on just coding that they learned when they were 10.
Yeah.
So it's almost like the same concept now for these kids, for an opportunity, a very big opportunity, I think, because these big companies are not going to know how to talk to AI. They're going to be like, I keep telling it this, but it's not giving me what it wants. And then you have someone like, oh, let me go ahead and prompt it, and then it gives them what they want, and then essentially can be the new consultant.
Right, because we still have, you know, how many you get the millennials, you got the Gen Xers, right? I mean, you're going to have a lot of folks. I think the Gen Zers are a little bit more adaptable to AI. I mean, I'm sure it goes both ways, and there's some Gen Xers and millennials that'll be, you know, a little bit more adaptive and some not. But, you know, it's interesting that you say that, because I think that people are going to have this, like, so this is just kind of a weird theory. I think people, it's an ego thing. Okay. And what I mean by that is that, man, I've spent all this time gathering this knowledge for all these years of experience, and that's how I bring value. And this thing is basically in less than 30 seconds, right? Going to be able to spit everything out, almost to the point better than I can. And I'm just like, you know what? That's crap. I think people actually believe that. Like, why are they trying to compete with it when they should just be like, okay, wait a minute. Maybe I can take what's up in here and magnify my thoughts by 10 times and do it way faster and go through that process. But I think you're going to have a lot of hesitance. I think people dislike it because then it makes them feel less valuable. And I can kind of understand that, right? Because they feel like, wow, that sense of that's taking my job, instead of looking at it like, okay, that's going to help me do my job 10 times better. And I think that's the mindset. But I bet you if people really broke this down, and got it down in the, if somebody was laying down in that couch right there, man, and you'd be like, okay, what do you really not like about it? And I think people just think that.
Think it does go to the ego.
It is because it's kind of in their mind, it's a form of cheating. Right?
Yeah.
Because and I'll tell you a funny story. So my grandmother was a English school teacher years ago. She passed in 19, 2 weeks shy of her 102nd birthday. So so bear with me here, like in the 50s or whatever. And they had a parent-teacher conference. She was telling me this. And they were talking to this mom, and they were saying, little Timmy can't spell and needs to work on spelling. And you know what she said? She looked at my grandmother and said, what does he need to do that for? Because one day there'll be computers that'll spell for him. And they just laughed. They thought that was the funniest thing. And of course, when, the word processor came out and did all the autocorrect and spell correct, right? That was kind of it. So I don't remember exactly what year that was, but she would tell me that story, and she said that they thought this woman was just so far out of line in her commentary. They didn't believe it. And then when it came, she's like, man, this is amazing, right? So, but there was a part of her that was like, well, people should know how to spell. Right. So I do think that there's that kind of mindset that are going to hold people back because they just don't want to embrace it because they're frustrated with it, or it's ego.
Yeah, I wish I had it when I was working as a CPA. It would have made my job way easier.
I bet. Tax time?
Sorry, hold on. You got a question? Hold on. That's what I used to do when I didn't know. I just Google.
Yeah, right. And then you'd have to go back. I mean, but before Google, right, you have to go to a tax code book, right? And kind of look it up, right? So you can kind of see the progression of that.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's why I was always in school. I'm like, why do we have to take these tests? When I go work at a CPA firm, I have my phone, I have the internet. If I don't know the answer, I just look it up.
Yeah. Why not? Why not? It's just, yeah. I mean, and like you said, it's like so much more different now. I mean, to be able to like have a conversation with it in a sense and just be like, man, this is kind of crazy.
This is interesting.
It is. Or how it will remember certain things about you and it learns, right?
And it's like, when did I tell you that?
Yeah, when did I tell you that? Well, and I bet you if you ask you, when did I tell you that? It'll probably be able to tell you the exact time, exact minute, exact second. It's crazy.
So running two businesses can obviously be a lot of mind power.
Yes.
So what are some things that help you keep your mind sharp?
Well, I think a lot of it is really getting centered in the day, like in the morning. I mean, I really find it important to have some quiet time, right? And I do actually try to read actual books, like, not on a screen, really try to like take that and just take that minute and just get ready for the day. And I feel like that helps me. And what's interesting is that if I do that on a consistent basis, and develop that discipline on an everyday basis, I see that the days go a lot. I mean, it doesn't mean that stuff doesn't still happen.
Right.
It's actually the way that I deal with that stuff, and be able to just really go through that and go, man, you know what? How would I have handled this if I didn't have that moment of being centered in the beginning, right, early on in the day? And a lot of that is routine, right? I mean, I'll tell you one thing that blows my mind is the subconscious mind, right? I mean, I could study that for the rest of my life because it's fascinating how it works, right? And what comes out in it and what doesn't, at certain times, and how you react to things. based on that. And I think that getting centered helps me, just be more focused and more, have a bigger, cup to just handle stuff, right? Because I mean, a lot of things that we're doing as entrepreneurs, as you guys know, is you're solving problems.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yep.
I mean,
every day,
fires,
right? Putting out fires and trying to prevent those fires. Then you're trying to put this thought process. But the one thing I don't want to do is, because I value my, family so much. It's so important to me. Is that I don't want to be so spent during the day that when I come home that I have nothing left that day, to be able to, share with my family and be present in that situation. So, I think it's important. So, I mean, to answer your question, those are, and also as you get older, I think you learn not to maybe react so intensely on stuff. Like everything's not that big of a deal. You can just take a minute. You can take 5 minutes and just kind of get yourself centered again. So.
And has that been something you've done for years, or was this something you did even when you started the business?
I will say that this is probably more a recent development. Okay. And I would tell you, when I first started, it was go, right? Like just trying to figure out that first 3 years. It's like, man, I got to keep this thing going. I got to build this momentum. And it was like, man, I don't even have time for that. Sometimes I'd get up at like 4 a.m. and, I'd be on there trying to fix stuff, and send stuff out just so, at 8 o'clock the phone would ring, right? Or I'd have to be driving somewhere. So there was a lot of that. So, I mean, there was a moment of kind of burnout. I would tell you, during the lockdown, that was a hard time for me because I couldn't go, right? And then I think that's when I really started to realize, it's kind of funny, over time, that was like, okay, you do not just only have to take care of your body, right, your physical body, but you have to take care of your mind so you can, be able to deal with these types of things that are going to throw at you, because it always is. I mean, I don't know anybody who has a business that there's not something that comes up that they have to address.
Comes up every day.
Right. So yeah, I mean that's good, and also staying healthy, working out.
Yeah.
I lost 83 pounds.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, man, I was pretty heavy, man.
Big boy.
I was a big boy, man. I'll tell you when it really got bad is when I couldn't even tie my shoe, man. My belly was so big. I mean, if I'm gonna have a vulnerable moment with you guys, but if you got to sit there and ask your wife to tie your shoe, like, because when you're walking, man, your shoes come untied, and you're sitting there going, "Oh my gosh, how embarrassing is that?" Right? I'm just so glad that maybe it's out there. I don't know. It's like, look at this guy, can't tie his shoe, man. Like, I can't do it, man. Like whatever, right? But or you have to go to a bench and you got to stick your foot up there and you got to tie your shoe. It was bad. And I know you were talking about mobility. I had zero mobility, man, practically. I mean, I had mobility, but that's an exaggeration. But being that heavy was
a toll.
Oh man, and it was a bad toll. So I finally got to the point where it was like, man, enough is enough.
Enough is enough.
And I did with a group of guys. There's 3 of us total, and everybody wanted to lose weight. And I think it was really it was crazy. It was actually a good friend of mine. He's my pastor, and another guy I go to church with.
Nice.
And I think they came to me, man, and they were just like, man, I just got to tell you something. Like, they were just being real, man. They were like, dude, you got to do something, and that was part of it.
That's real friends right there.
Yeah, because that was number one. And then it was kind of interesting because I was like, that year too, I remember there was a sermon that just really hit me. It was right around, Thanksgiving, the year before, right when I got started, and it was about being sober-minded, and I'd like to, indulge and enjoy, some drinks, or, I was kind of really into like, scotches and whiskeys and stuff like that. And it just really resonated with me. And I was like, man, you know what? I just need to like stop, because it just really hit me in that way. And it was amazing because it was like, I told my wife, I said, I think we really need to do this. So we did for 13 months, right? And I just said,
nice.
And during that time frame of weight loss, and it was crazy because I was the heaviest out of everybody, right? So everybody was a little bit ahead of me. And I got so super disciplined. We did it with keto, and we would weigh in and we would text, like 5:30 in the morning. This is. So I was watching, at first I was watching the other guys, man, and they were losing weight. Like, it was so bad. Like, one of the guys, he was like, God, man, I was like, why? He's like 20 pounds. And like, like the first like 2 or 3 weeks, he was just insane. And mine was a little slower. But as I went on, I just got more and more disciplined. And then I noticed that those guys, like, sometimes, if they had to travel or, during the holidays. But what I did during the holidays is, man, I didn't come off of
everything.
I stayed on it. And people were like, you're not going to eat those cookies? I mean, nope, not going to eat those cookies, not going to eat any carbs. I don't mean to be rude. And I would just tell people up front, if you go to dinner, it's kind of like, what, you're not going to eat what's wrong with my potatoes, or what's wrong? I just tell them up front, be like, hey, I'm really on this strict diet. I'm losing weight. I've already got there. And I did it. I got down 83 pounds, and it was such a blessing. It was amazing. And I really think that, man, I can tell you right now, I don't think I could have done it, without like that kind of support. And my wife was super supportive, but that combination of being sober-minded, being disciplined, and then also having, this group of men that I could, interact with and go through that process was a real thing. Now, and I noticed a lot of things started changing, right? My mobility got better, right? Things were just a little bit easier to handle too. I mean, when you have that kind of stress on your body, my wife used to always say, hey, if you have an extra 25 pounds that you're carrying, just pick up a 25-pound dumbbell. Right? And just think about that, right? And then if it's 50 pounds, just try to pick 50 pounds. Man, I don't think they make it. I'm sure they have an 80-pound dumbbell somewhere, but I couldn't imagine just thinking about just going in there. And man, there was a lot of aspects too that was hard, man. When I get on a plane, I mean, I would have to pull the seatbelt all the way out, and then I guess if it gets really bad, they got extenders. But I didn't have to ask him. But it was like, but that's not really the way that
little stuff everywhere that added up to be like, man.
Yeah. So
change.
So that was good. So I stay pretty adamant. I mean, I'm not perfect now. I mean, it's a process of maintaining and being, getting back to that discipline. And there are times where you can kind of get derailed. I would say stress is another thing, like learning how to manage stress.
Yeah.
Is kind of a big deal, because I find myself when I'm, stressed out, that I'm not as, focused, or I'm just not as clear, on getting the job done, that I need to. So I mean, that's another aspect that I would say is that you got to find different ways. So that's why that getting centered part, like it's kind of like underwriting in a way. Right?
Yeah.
Don't set yourself up like you have to walk uphill backwards, man, with your eyes closed, right? But one day at a time. I mean, that's another thing.
It's always one day.
Yeah.
If you try and look too far ahead, you'll get discouraged.
Yeah.
Like, I'm trying to lose 50 pounds. I should have lost that yesterday.
Oh yeah.
So just focus, enjoy the journey, and then next thing you know, you've lost 20, 30 pounds, and you're like, oh shoot.
Yep. Yeah. It's amazing. But yeah, dude, that was a good moment. The first time I could tie my own shoe by myself, man. Right? That was like, yes, yeah, I can do that. Not so embarrassing. So
nice. So what's do you listen to like podcasts or anything like that to kind of help with like your mindset or like help with your business?
Yeah, I do. One of the things so I also have a podcast as well.
Yeah, that's what you mentioned.
And I enjoy doing that. And there was a couple of things. I mean, we have a specific purpose, trying to find your place in it. Yeah. I mean, you guys understand, right?
Yeah.
You're just trying to find that. But, a lot of it was I really do want to help people and just really talk about, practical things. I like to talk about entrepreneurship. But, there's some, podcasts that I listen to. I don't know if you guys ever listen to, Ed Milet.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, he's got a very interesting. I like to listen to the Joe Rogan podcast, as well. I mean, I know that's kind of a big one. I mean, I don't listen to like all 3 hours of it, but like, there might be some segments that I do. I do listen to Andy Frisella on occasion.
He's got some good stuff.
Yeah, he really has some good stuff. I mean, he kind of calls it like it is. So, I try to look at, but I also try to like look at other podcasts too. If something comes, it's like, hey, you know what? I should really kind of, listen to this. And there was another guy that I listened to. It's called The Mindset Mentor. Just talking
that one out.
Talking about like, all things, specific to, the mindset you have. Because it's kind of crazy because I don't think people really understand, like, again, when I talk about the subconscious and how your brain works, I mean, I don't know what the new statistic is, but I think back in the day, I think they said that we use such a small percentage of our brain.
Yeah.
So it's like, what do we do with the rest of it? right? And who are we to think that, this stuff doesn't affect us, and being able to like get through a lot of these, challenges that we have. A lot of it is mindset. It's so weird. You could look at something like 4 different ways. Some people are like just like super positive about it. Hey, no big deal. So what? And sometimes people are like, oh man, it's the end of the world. And then there's kind of places in between, and it's just amazing how the way that you approach it, it doesn't make the problem go away. I think it just really gives you that ability to navigate that problem, based on your mindset, to see how you get that problem resolved. And I think that's a really big thing.
Nice.
But I'm going to be listening to your guys' podcast now. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, let us know. Yeah, we let people kind of just tell their story and just kind of help inspire others as well, because you never know what someone may have gone through, and you may be going through that at that moment, and you're like, they did it, we can do it.
Yeah.
Kind of just creating more sparks in people as well.
No, absolutely. And I think that's so important because, again, with this whole technology revolution and AI, and I can see where people can basically isolate themselves.
Oh, yeah. Easily.
And that is not how we're designed to be isolated. People need to be able to interact with other people. So even if they're listening, to people's stories and just kind of going, man, okay, that makes sense. From that standpoint, that's what we want to do, right? We want to help people. And if we have an opportunity to share a story or share a circumstance or share some advice or something that we learned, then I think that's amazing, to be able to do that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Technologies came a long way, even since the early 2000s.
Yeah.
It's crazy, from the little the iPod, and then
oh, yeah, man.
the iPod all the way to the iPhone.
Yeah, like I remember. Do you guys remember the BlackBerry and the Palm Trio?
The Nokia,
they were expensive.
Yeah,
Snake game. You're like, you got the game?
Oh yeah. Or when you had to text message and you didn't actually have a full keyboard, and you actually used the. What do you call it? Like, you get the ABC and everything on the numbers, right? And then it would like auto do the words, and you'd be like blah 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 blah. They're like, what? Huh?
Spell something out.
Yeah.
No.
So, anyone who's looking to get into entrepreneurship, what are some things you would let them know when they're just getting started?
Well, I think the big thing is, the number one rule, I think, is discipline. You have to, and if you don't have it or you don't think you have that level, don't overthink it. Get discipline. Try one habit, and work through that. Try it like, 21 days, they say, to form a habit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But, be consistent. Yes, we want to be motivated. Motivation's important. But, there's a study out there that says, hey, discipline is actually better than motivation.
Oh, yeah.
And if you combine the two, right? So discipline, and then which is also consistency, and then you put the motivation together, man, that's going to be a recipe for success. And also like the discouragement, right? Don't get discouraged. If you fail at something, that's just another way for you to find out how to do it better, right? So just because you fail, doesn't mean that it's over or you don't know what you're doing. But, I would say to the entrepreneur starting today is you got to be looking at AI, right? You have to be looking at AI. You need to be learning how to, like you said, prompt it, and you need to ask it questions because, look at the advantage that you're going to have in this new, technology-driven world, or better yet, being able to find the information that you need so much quicker. But in the end, having that discipline to do that on a regular basis is important. But I think one of the biggest things that I would say, the last thing I'll say about this is that, we always have to understand clearly that we have something to learn every day.
Oh, yeah.
And as an entrepreneur, if you understand that you have something to learn every day and that you don't know it all that day, then I think that's going to be one of the biggest assets. Because if you look for that, I think your mindset is going to be right to do the things that you're going to need to do to be successful.
I like that.
I agree.
Those are all good little tips for sure.
Yeah, man. That's great.
Oh, yeah. So like how you said, discipline, motivation. Are there times when you're not quite motivated and the discipline kicks in?
Yes. So think about this. Like in that whole aspect of, of weight loss. I'll use that as an example because I think people can relate to that.
Yeah.
Right? So you're going through this whole process and you're looking at everybody else, enjoying all that food that you used to love to eat, right? And you're looking at that, and so you're not really motivated at that very moment, right? Because you're having to witness this, and you're the only one at the party, right? That's basically, sitting here sticking to your very strict diet, right? But the discipline is what gets you through it, right? Because if you weren't disciplined, you'd give into that motivation, to just say, hey, what the heck with it? It's one day. It's Christmas.
Yeah.
No big
That's
deal.
how it starts.
Yeah.
And then it's how it starts, and then it's like, oh, okay, well, then the second day comes around. It's New Year's, and then it's like January 3rd, January 4th.
Somebody's
and 5th,
birthday.
So yes, so where I'm going with this is that if you think about it in those types of terms, the discipline is what pushes you through. Now, interestingly enough, as I got past those, the holidays and those, that motivation to just eat that whatever I wanted, I appreciated that more. And then I was motivated again, right, to continue to lose weight.
Yeah.
And then that idea of me getting pushed through that. So I think the discipline, and I know the discipline very much pushes you through. So there are certain things that we all have to do, right, as business owners, depending on what it is. But it's usually doing the tasks. We can't be like procrastinators. You don't want to put stuff off. And there are certain things that you need to do in your business to be successful, whether it's making that extra call or sending that extra email or, reaching out to somebody on LinkedIn, doing that meeting, or coming into the office and just going through that repetitiveness of, holding that time frame that you're supposed to be doing, whatever it is, learning more about AI, right?
Yeah.
That could be a thing every single morning, that you can do. A lot of people talk about that. Or, what am I doing to get centered every single day, right? That's the stuff that gets you through, the difficult times, because having that discipline, is going to lead to, you being able to push through, the good times and the bad times, right? Because sometimes there might be opportunity where things are going really good and you just need to keep going, right? And there's a tendency where people put the brakes on.
Yeah.
So you got to be disciplined about that too.
I like it. There we go. So we're going to go ahead and start wrapping up the podcast.
Absolutely.
So for the last piece, if you can just let the audience know one piece of advice when it comes to life, what would that one piece be?
Man, look, I think I've shared throughout this process that, I have faith, I believe in God, that's something that was really important to me, growing up. And then as I matured, there was, different aspects of it. But I think somebody once explained it to me this way, and this is the piece of advice I would get. So when they looked at the hierarchy of stuff, because I think I told you guys that, I was divorced, and it was disappointing. I mean, it was my high school sweetheart, and after 2 years, she wanted out. And look, there's two sides to everything. Nobody's perfect. But somebody once explained it to me, and it made perfect sense. He said, if you have the hierarchy, if you have, God first, your wife second, then your kids, and then, whatever your business and friends underneath, if you're doing this and you're honoring the Lord, right, you're going to do things that, that are going to honor your wife. If you honor your wife, you're going to do things to honor your kids, right? And if you're honoring your kids, right, so on and so forth. And I thought about that too, and and I looked at that, and I'm like, wow, that is something that's amazing, because if I'm focusing on those things and just being grateful and having gratitude to where it belongs, and thanking God, each and every day for the things that we have, I mean, that is part of the thing that just makes me, just so humble, on a day-to-day basis, and just really appreciate things. And, I'm a human being, and I'm not perfect. And I'm not saying that by any means. But it really draws me back to that, because, I mean, there's been a lot of times where things have been difficult, and there's been times where things have been great, but just having that mindset is good. And, another way to maybe even think about that, this is one of the things that I teach my team, and this the second part on the entrepreneurial part is that I kind of have this hierarchy of, company, team, client. And the mindset is, if you make good decisions for the company, right, it's going to be good for the team. If you make good decisions for the team, it's going to be good for the client. And if you make good decisions for the client, it's going to be good for the company.
Oh, nice.
So
Like that.
comes back all the
That's
way
nice.
around, right? So,
Yeah.
so anyway, so that's one of those things that I kind of look at. So, my faith is very important to me, and also just kind of looking at the order of things, I think is always really good too. So, I've really enjoyed talking with you guys. I mean, that's like been an absolute blessing and a pleasure, man, because I think we talked about some really cool stuff today.
Oh,
Oh yeah, definitely loved the conversation, and thanks again for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate it.
No, well, thanks for
Thank you
having
for
me.
your time.
Oh yeah,
All right, that's
Thank you.
great, guys.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your story. We'll catch you guys on the next episode. What's your story?